Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Shine at Work podcast. I'm your host, Karen Weeks. As a transformation career coach and culture and people leader, my goal is to help career-oriented humans get unstuck so that they can shine brighter in business and in life. I believe that you deserve a career that lights you up because, spoiler alert, it also impacts how bright you shine in your life. This season, each week, we will focus on a key skill that you need to shine at work and inspirational stories on ways to navigate your career, because I know what it feels like when your light is dim. I made a career change from theater to HR and now expanded to coaching, and at times in my life, I had to take a look deep inside to see what was most important, what made me shine bright, and make adjustments along the way. It's possible. I did it, my guests did it, and I help others do it every day. I hope you walk away from each episode not just inspired, but with some actionable advice. And I hope that you find it so valuable that you subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and tell your friends, because we all deserve to shine bright in our lives, specifically at work. Okay, let's jump into this week's episode. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here with my friend, Erin. Erin and I have known each other for, I guess, a little over a year now, give or take. And I have been so impressed both with her as a business owner, how she's navigated her career, how she thinks about helping other people in their businesses. And, we're going to really focus on imposter syndrome today, because I think that's something that a lot of us feel throughout our journeys. It's actually what Erin helps people with as part of their branding and communication strategies. So excited to have you here. Welcome. Her energy is also amazing. So also excited to have her just share that with you.
Gosh, thank you, Karen. Thank you so much for inviting me on today on your podcast. I'm very honored. And I love that we're talking about something that for some is very uncomfortable, of imposter syndrome.
Well, and
let's get uncomfortable.
I love it. Let's go there. Well, and we talked about this a little bit in the prep, but we're also going to kind of talk about it shows itself in different ways. So you may not even realize that's what you're feeling, but it's coming through with a different emotion. So we're going to go into all of those different areas. But first, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself and kind of walk us through a little bit of your own career journey.
Yes. So hello, world. I'm Erin Breeden. I am CEO and head mermaid of Blue Tide Creative. Yes, I said head mermaid because, as Karen has heard me say before, if you take that opportunity to take a risk on yourself and take a leap into entrepreneurship, you should be able to give yourself whatever title you want. And also, it's a great way to weed out people who don't want to necessarily work with you and that you don't want to work with. But yeah, my career path, I've been very fortunate. My background is in marketing and public relations. And throughout my career journey, before I founded Blue Tide Creative, I had these opportunities to work in PR agency life. I've worked in-house as a marketing director. And I even had an incredible opportunity to be a editor-in-chief of a magazine, a bridal magazine, which is really juicy stuff. If anyone ever wants, there could be a whole podcast on all the things I heard and learned in the bridal industry. But I think overall my career path has been storytelling. Whether it is telling someone's story in a traditional journalistic aspect of, on digital or paper or whatever magazine, and also in-house of telling the stories of my client. I always consider everybody a client, even though it was my job, just to make sure people knew what was going on. And then PR was really interesting because there was always so much going on. You had one client had a product launch, one client had this, one client had that. And I loved so much about each industry, and I kept trying to find a job or an opportunity that would allow me to do everything and to use those skill sets. And when I couldn't, and I felt really stuck, this is where we'll talk about imposter syndrome is, why can't I just be happy in this role? Why am I, feeling like I'm bursting at the seams? And that's when I really had a moment of, I think it's time for you to go out on your own and serve your clients the way you want to and work in the way you want to. So now with that, I'm able to take all that experience, and Blue Tide Creative is a firm that specializes in overall communications, strategy, branding, ensuring that anyone that I work with, that their messaging matches their mission and that we get them out to whatever audience they're looking to get in front of.
Well, and I think it's so amazing how you talked about a couple of things that I think are going to continue through our conversation. So, first of all, storytelling. And so, whether that is through being able to confidently tell your own story and the story that you put out there into the world, but also the ability to, I know sometimes when people are thinking about changing jobs or making a career change, they have the imposter syndrome come through of, yeah, but I can't do something like that, or people don't do that, or that's too big of a jump. But you talked about different roles that you had and you used the through line of storytelling. So I think when people can find that connective tissue through all the things that they're able to do, that helps their confidence around, oh, maybe I actually can do this because I have always been doing it. It just may have looked differently.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that you pointed out because, whether you're looking for a new job or you're taking a leap into a different industry, you're right. There can always be that common thread of storytelling or whatever it is that you do that, ain't no one touching this. Like, I'm really good about, I can always say, but I am really good about getting information out of people. I always see when I meet with clients or others, like they have this script that they're going to tell me about, oh, I graduated here and I did this. And that's great for your about section of your website. But if you're trying to engage an audience or if you're trying to engage the media, they need to know a little bit more about you. So I always thought, even, before I was an editor, I did take journalism classes. Like, I was a really good investigator, like
Mm.
kind of getting under the facade and seeing, kind of the wizard behind the curtain, if you will. But that is it, we can get caught up in titles, we can get caught up in what the industry is, and I've never been in that industry, but if you have a skill set that can translate into whatever they're doing, absolutely,
Yeah.
go for it.
Well, and I also love what you said about authenticity for yourself. Um, I know, so Erin and I work together in a couple of different ways, but one thing that she really helped me do was around some of my messaging around, shining bright, and with Kristen helping coming up with the title of this podcast, it was all sort of coming together. And you really find a way to pull out of people what is already there, but you help them identify it for themselves. And I think that's something that is very special and unique that really helps people be who they want to be. And that's, if you're going to have confidence and overcome imposter syndrome, part of it is you have to feel like you're putting your best foot forward, not the foot that other people want you to put forward.
Yeah, it's true, because I think when people see, people, shining, or, the mermaid out here swimming or
Yeah.
whatever I'm doing today, it lets them realize that it's okay to be me,
Yes.
and that's the most important thing is, I think so many times we, especially in corporate America, we get bogged down with, we have to do this. This is the way it's always done. This is status quo. Don't shake the boat. Like, this is how it has to be. But that's boring. And it's
Yeah.
really, to all of us, I know from, I think, pretty much everybody who's in my life, we're not boring. So
Yeah.
why are we trying to hide who we are to fit this bubble that was basically
Yes.
constructed, 40 plus years ago by
Yeah.
somebody else?
Well, and I think that's really a great point because when I think about times that I have felt imposter syndrome, it's because on paper, I have recognized that I should be there, I deserve to be there, whatever. But I go through well, why me? Like, there are so many other brilliant HR leaders who could be giving this talk. There are so many other people that could be doing X, Y, and Z. So why do they want me? And it's actually exactly what you were just talking about, that they wanted me because of something that I bring to the table, because I'm Karen Weeks versus so and so who's Sally Smith or Todd so and so. Like, they wanted me, and so that's where I've actually felt the most uncomfortable, is the why me part. So how do people start working through that? So when you hear someone say something like that, like, what do you pull out of them to say, this is why you should be proud and confident of who you are?
Yeah, I think well, for me, when I'm talking to somebody, I ask a lot of questions, and it's that moment where you see the smile happen
Mm,
and the eyes light up, and you realize, okay, that's what somebody's passionate about.
mm,
I think it goes to, one of the hardest things we can ever do is have a conversation with ourselves.
mm.
Not with a conversation with ourselves that's not like, oh my gosh, you need to lose weight or you
Yeah.
need to do this. Like, no, like where you sit
Yeah.
in it, because you probably are already feeling uncomfortable and you're probably like something's off and you've pushed it down. The hardest thing we can do, and one of the most rewarding things anybody can do if they don't have me around to be like, let's talk about this, is sit quietly and just say, what is it that I want? What is the more? Because usually if you have that feeling of I want more, or this is uncomfortable, or you're ready to bust out of something, but you don't know what it is. That's the moment when you need to sit quietly and have a conversation with yourself, which I think sounds easy when you say it, but it's also sometimes the hardest conversations ever, because you know yourself inside and out, but it's being completely honest with yourself and seeing that. And I always say, you have to sit in the discomfort. Because that's where the magic happens, is when you're in the discomfort and you have to peel away the layers that you've put up or that others have put around you. And that's where the magic happens, because I think it's really your passion. I always talk about your sparkle, your shine. That's why I always love that about you. Is there something that makes each of us uniquely different?
Yeah.
And the difference is, are we willing to take a risk on ourselves and find out what that is? Or are we just going to just let it, just kind of push it down and be like, no, this is fine. I'm fine. This is great. I'll take that 2% raise this year. That sounds really great. Thanks. I'm not going to fight for myself. I'm just going to sit here.
All right, my friends, we are getting towards the mid part of the year. How are you doing against your career goals? Are you feeling a little stuck? Were you hoping to make more progress than you have? Have you talked to your manager about hoping to get a promotion or make an internal move or take on new projects, and you haven't seen that quite come to fruition yet? Or maybe you're approaching the middle of the year and you're going, oh my God, I still have no idea what I want to do, or I don't know what I want my goals to be over the next couple years, or for the rest of this year even. Well, let me tell you how I can help you. We talk a lot about career changers on this podcast, and that's true. A lot of folks that I work with are trying to make some sort of career change. But I also work a lot with people who are just trying to identify their career goals and figure out where they want to go in their career. And it's very possible that there are lots of opportunities at your current role. Or maybe you just found that new opportunity and you're trying to set yourself up for success in your new company. Either way, I can help you identify what your goals need to be, how to talk to your manager about them, and then really identify a path forward to really help you achieve all those things that you're looking to achieve in your career. So if you're trying to figure out how to be successful this year or in the future years and you need a little help, let's connect. I can help you figure out a path forward and really make sure that you are shining at work for the rest of this year and in future years. Finding those layers and letting go of some of that self-talk or expectation from others, those can be the loudest voices in our head sometimes, which is often what's leading to imposter syndrome around, I'm not worthy of that. I don't deserve that. Good girls don't do that. All those sort of things. When I turned 40, I really wanted to sort of embrace the adult that I had finally sort of figured out I wanted to become. And, this is just a silly little thing, but I did skydiving. I jumped out of a plane because responsible people don't do that. Yeah, they can if they want to have a little fun and have a little adrenaline rush and try something that they've never done before. So F it, I jumped out of a plane. And so, but I think we put labels on ourselves, or either because we feel it or we hear it from others. And that's one of the first things I think we need to shed. So I love how you describe sitting with yourself for a while. What are those messages that you're hearing either in your voice or in others, and either let those go or sort of let them sit with you, but then figure out how you're going to work through them.
Yeah. And I had a moment where, because of course I have imposter syndrome, because I was in these positions and I couldn't figure out, I remember of presenting ideas and I was told, no. We don't present new ideas. We just tweak the ones that we've already done because we know how to do those. Or I present an idea and then I'd be asked what the competitor was doing or what somebody else was doing, because it had to have, some kind of, proven stat that, oh, it works because look, so-and-so did it, but they did it 5 years ago. And that just got me thinking of like, am I not supposed to think? And that's the stupidest thing to ever think, is like, I am not supposed to think. But, I loved what you said of I really, when I sat with myself many years ago before I started, actually, if you really want to get as honest with yourself as possible, quit your, really high paying job with great benefits and go out on your own. And then you can sit in that discomfort for a few years. But I had that moment where, I was thinking, I was like, when did all of this stuff? Because I remember my mom even told me, she's like, I remember when you were like the girl that would look at me and be like, why? Okay, I'll do it. Watch me. That used to be my thing when I was little. They'd be like, don't tell Erin she can't do anything, because she'll look at you and be like, watch me. And maybe sometimes I got hurt because I really shouldn't have done it. But, I think it's sometimes we have, and I don't think it's always malice. I think a lot of it, especially, I don't want to gender anything, but like I will say with women, we have well-meaning women in our lives that have gone before us and we've all gone through our own struggles and stories, but some that were the pioneers, they've seen it. They did all these things, they had to act like the boys club. They had to act a way that wasn't them. So, I remember mentors that I would have as I got up would be like, well, remember to do this and don't do this and do this and don't do this and be seen, not always heard. And if you're heard, like there were all these things that were put on me that when you come out of especially college, you're like, bam, here I am. And then the first thing you hear is don't do this, don't do this. Oh, don't wear this, don't say this, maybe you should tone down your accent, or, just these little things where it's like, okay, what's wrong with me?
Yeah. Oh.
And I don't always think it's, malicious. Yeah. I think it's just people don't know any better.
Yes. Yes.
And then unfortunately, depending on where we are, who we are, how young we are. There's even stuff, you said the thing that I hate, good girls don't do. Yeah. And that's something well-meaning, but even as children, we're already taught good girls don't do this. Boys will be boys. There's already that divide of girls have to not act like themselves. They have to be this mold. And I don't know if can we cuss on your podcast?
Go for it.
Fuck the mold. Nobody had fun being a good girl. You know what I mean? Like, and it's taking risks, and we're taught early not to take risks, or we're taught when we get into the workforce, if you're around people that have unfortunately had to mold themselves a certain way to get ahead of, they're going to think that's the way it has to be. And they're going to try to mold you, which of course feels like you're being told everything you do is wrong.
Yeah.
And, I think it's just, people are well-intentioned. And I heard, I always think about people who are well-intentioned. They don't mean any harm. But I was at an event in 2021, because I don't know when people are going to listen to this, evergreen, where the iconic fashion designer Anna Sui was there, and she was giving this incredible talk. And someone raised their hand for a question and answer time and was like, what's some of the obstacles that you faced and how have you overcome them? And she was like, I get this question a lot. And she goes, I'm pretty sure it's because I'm a woman. And she's like, I'm pretty sure it's because I'm Chinese first generation.
Wow.
And then her, I was like, oh, geez, we're setting this up. And then her answer like almost took my breath away. And the way she delivered it is she said, I don't believe in obstacles.
Ugh.
It just like, I was like, you could see kind of people turn around like, what did she say? And she did. She said, I don't believe in obstacles, because obstacles are either things that someone has put in front of you or that you've put in front of yourself because you've believed what others have said.
Wow.
And I just sat there and I was like, yeah. And it goes back to imposter syndrome. We allow all this outside noise to come in, and we have our insecurities and our fears, and those are fine because we're always going to have them. But it's how we project that out. Does that then make us quiet? Does it keep these great ideas we have, secrets, or our company or ourselves, never benefit from this incredible insight? But the way she said it was just like, wow. And then she talked about, her career and how she had to, she was like, even if it was a no and a door was slammed, she was like, I knew there'd be another door that would open. or if it was a soft no and a gentle shut of the door, maybe that meant that that wasn't a finality. That wasn't it. Maybe
Mhm.
I just needed to go back to the drawing board and, look at what they said and recreate things.
Yeah.
Um, I always say, and it's, you know, well, we've talked about this because we've worked with Lauren Widrick before,
Mhm.
is that sometimes we're our own cock blocks.
Yes.
And it's like, why are we blocking ourselves from being happy and helping others, especially, when we're talking about the workforce? Why are we preventing ourselves from helping others and doing
Yeah.
well?
Well, and it's so interesting because the way you brought up sort of how we can get in our own ways versus the ways others sort of get in our way, and how that sort of starts to manifest into what actually the behavior is, I think is so important. Because I think at times I felt imposter syndrome because was I living the life I was supposed to be living? Or was I, I was so driven in my career. And by the way, talk about like positive reinforcement can sometimes also hinder you. I would get praised for the promotions, working really hard, climbing the corporate ladder, like all of the things that should be a lot of good things. But I then took that on as a burden. And so,
Yeah.
whether that was, do I actually like this job? Do I like where I'm living? All the things that I was like, this is supposed to be really, really good, but something doesn't feel right to me. My imposter syndrome was why aren't I feeling that way? Because I'm supposed to be in this perfect place because I did all the things right and I keep getting all the praise for it. And so I do think that imposter syndrome can look like different things. It doesn't mean I'm like leaning away because I'm scared or anxious or nervous about something. I could become a little more combative. I could be, like you said, a little quiet. I could come across as a little disengaged. So I think it can show itself in a lot of different ways. So as you think about either as you've worked with folks or within yourself, how have you helped yourself kind of work through that moment? So I'm feeling this way, however it's coming out into the world, I'm feeling this way. How can I work through it?
Yeah, I do. I love a good
Mm.
sit with myself moment. I do for myself personally. I journal it out.
Mhm.
I really, after so many years of stifling, that I realized that didn't work for me to push it down. And then of course it's like, ta-da, I'm going out on my own. Very dramatic fashion, but then you have to really turn inward on yourself. And I'll never tell anyone to be an entrepreneur, a business owner. It is hard, but find your happiness. And I think
Yeah.
you have to figure out what that is. And I think what we don't do, which really causes imposter syndrome, and I think you've alluded to this, is that something's not right, that feeling in the pit of your
Mhm.
stomach. And then instead of dealing with that feeling and figuring out why, we push it down so much and then we internalize it in a way that something's wrong with me because I should be feeling this, this, and this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, it's always that like, you have this job, you do this, you're getting praise, people think you're doing great. But, it's again that more feeling of, is this it? Is this
Yeah.
everything? Um, and I didn't want that. And I was seeing, especially agency life, you bill in 15-minute increments.
Oh gosh.
And I hated that for myself
Yeah.
because I'll be completely honest, I was so excited to talk to a client or like whatever I was doing. I didn't hit the timer on the computer thing to track it. And
Yeah.
then I'd have to go back and be like, what did I do this week? What happened? But
Mm.
then I also thought, I was like, do I really want to live my life in 15-minute
Yeah.
increments and start beating myself up because I didn't hit the timer at the right time?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that became oh, you're so disorganized, or why
Mm.
can't you be more proactive? Why can't you do? And it became this cycle. And
Yeah.
really, what the start was is, this isn't how I want to work. This isn't how I
Yeah.
want to be.
Yeah.
And instead of addressing it, it turned into things where I started internalizing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think too, the other thing that really just spoke to me as you were telling your story about how it was starting to manifest for you is finding people you can talk to. So you mentioned earlier, mentors have the best intention of, well, don't do this or try this or avoid this, but how can mentors or communities that you're a part of be vulnerable with each other and share some of our stories around this is how it felt for me. This is how I worked through it. I sat with it. I journaled it. I realized what was feeling off so that we can help promote it with others and give them the space to say, I don't feel right about something, whether they literally call it imposter syndrome or not. Don't worry about the term, but something
Right.
doesn't feel right. I don't feel like I'm living my true self. I don't feel connected to the work that I'm doing. If you put that into a community or ask a mentor about it, it's then on us to come back to you with, oh, I can completely understand. This is personally how it's felt like to me. This is my personal moments of feeling a similar way so that we can help lift them up versus stifle it or feed into it even further.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's the big thing of, again, it's all well intentioned, but I think
Yes.
one of the best things mentors and communities can do is listen to each other and
Mm,
not already have those canned talks. Because I remember having a conversation once and it was, oh, but if you're here for 2 years, that looks so good on your resume. So
mm,
if you can just tough it out. And when I say those 2 years sucked, they were horrible.
yeah.
Like it was awful. I had, yeah, I think the biggest thing that mentor and community can do is if you're going to say you're going to mentor somebody, you got to listen to somebody.
Yeah.
And B, you've got to be willing, if you want them to tell you and to come with you with things, you've got to be willing to share your story,
Yeah. Yep.
because it sounds great to be a mentor and all that stuff. But if you're not willing to get in the weeds and really show what you did, because, it's always anything, you see A and you see maybe M where somebody is. You
Mm,
don't see the messy middle. And I think
yes.
people sometimes are afraid to talk about that. But the messy middle is what I think really forms community and what really forms trust is
Yeah.
because we're not perfect. And, I think with mentorship, and if anyone is looking for a mentor, really look at someone who they don't have to necessarily be in your business. They don't
Hmm.
necessarily have to work with you, a professional or somebody that you respect.
Yeah.
And, really, if they listen to you and let you speak and not interrupt and not interject or not try to talk you out of things, they should be talking with you on things, not talk you out of or even talk you through.
Hmm.
They should be with you and do touch points of, well, how are we feeling right now? How, it's not fixing it and it's not a quick fix. It has to be you're willing to go and be, we talk about authenticity. It's true. We still have to say the word because some people don't embrace it. And we have to be, if we want people to give us their trust, we have to be trustworthy in return.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love what you said about it's a journey. So I often think about, I don't know if you've ever watched the TV show 30 Rock, but there's an episode where Jack, like the big executive guy, has to give a speech and he's like in the bathroom, like hyping himself up. And I think sometimes we think that's what we have to do to like get through that moment of feeling like an imposter. And that might get you through that moment, but I actually want people to not have that moment to begin with. And so how can we help ourselves through mentors, through, coaches, through our own self-work, or just, talking to friends and family or whoever you trust in your life to actually figure out what is causing that to begin with. And then, yes, tools are helpful, but how can we actually help you get to the point where you don't feel those things as often, not just how do you get through that moment?
There's always, the hyping thing, gotta hype up ourselves with confidence. But I think, we need to also some of our confidence. I always like to say, someone always said, because we'll talk about him later. We'll talk about Chad in a little bit. Um, but confidence doesn't always equal competence.
Yes.
So, you know, I love that saying because it's also like, imagine if you have confidence in how competent you are,
Mm,
nothing can touch you. And I think, as we're talking about like mentorships and things that we can do, I think we have to not be afraid to toot our own horn.
yes.
It's like you can get praise from you did 16 hours today and look at the good work that you did and you brought in so much new billable work or whatever it is. Yes, that praise is great. It's not, as you've said, and I think I've alluded to, it's not sustainable because
Mm-mm.
16-hour days will wreak havoc on you mentally, personally, like spiritually, everything. But I think if you sit there and this is something I do. So maybe this is a tip. Anytime I finish a project or anytime I have like a big meeting or something, I sit down afterwards and I say, okay, what did I do really, really well that I'm like, yes, that's right there. And then I also sit there at the same time and say, okay, what could have been better? And it's not to put myself down, it's to learn. And it's not even, I wouldn't even say constructive criticism. It's just like, okay, so what could have been better? Okay, well, I could have gotten this maybe delivered a day sooner. Or it would have been great if I included this paragraph in there as like a summary. I'll do that next time. And then I turn it into a process so that the next time I do it, I can sit there and be like, don't forget this paragraph or don't forget this. But I think it's one of those things where we have to be kinder to ourselves too.
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest thing is taking a moment to say like what we do well. It's one of those things, I think of all those things where like you get asked like, what are the 3 things that you do really well? Or what is this? And then, whether it's a job application or you take one of those surveys where it's like, what are your 3 strengths? What do you think are your 3 strengths? And what do you think are your 3 weaknesses? I don't think anybody has a weakness. I think we just have areas of improvement, or it's an area where we accept that maybe as we go forth, we're going to delegate that off to somebody else.
Exactly. Yes.
It's okay. There's a solution to everything, but we can't beat ourselves up, and we have to make sure that through our journey, we're congratulating ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Side note, we don't have to do it all. We actually can invite other experts to join us on the journey, whether that's just to sort of tap their brain a little bit or like literally work with them. But yeah, we don't actually have to know it all ourselves.
No. And we can admit that we don't know it all.
Yes.
We were talking about this too. One of the worst things I think that has ever been coined is fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Fake it till you make it. And I've seen it in action where you don't know something, but you're in this meeting to talk about it. And either you are going to pull some BS out of your butt, or you're going to sit there and you're going to be quiet. You're going to be distant. You're going to be hoping you don't get called on because you don't want anyone to know that you didn't do the homework or that you don't know what's going on. Whereas, and I've seen it where people have lashed out at others, because they didn't want to be found out, or they'll throw somebody else on the bus where it's like, oh yeah, Jim, I think that's a great idea, but maybe we should hear from Susan, and then it's like, Susan's looking at you like, really? And it's so, I've seen it in different ways where fake it till you make it is horrible. It doesn't work. It causes internal stress and strife. It's like you're at an exam day, but you're in your like 20s or 30s. Nobody needs to have exam day unless they're going back to school for that. Like nobody needs that.
Yeah.
It's again, having that moment of being like, sorry, I need to research this, or even just like confidently saying, because you can say, I don't know, very confidently, where you're like, oh, I want to research that a little bit more, but I'm happy to get you my opinion by end of the day.
Yes. Yep.
Or something like that, where it shows confidence and competence, and also willingness to say, I don't know that, but I'm going to, because I think also too, fake it till you make it's just one of the worst things that I think anybody could ever try to do, because it already adds stress on you. And it's just, it's not good. And again, we can say with confidence and competence that we don't understand something, and we don't have to throw poor Susan under the bus, or we don't have to, kind of say things that people are probably looking at you like, do you even know what that word means? Throwing out all the acronyms like, oh, well, the KPI of that and the ROI is great. And people are looking at you like, I mean, she used big words, so maybe she knows what she's talking about.
She used the right jargon, so clearly she's qualified. Well, and I think too, it's also not going to even get you to the right answer if you fake it in the moment. You'll actually get to the right answer or a better answer or a more thoughtful answer to say, I actually would love to think about that for a few hours, or can I come back to you tomorrow on that? Because I want to take a step back and think about it a little more holistically, or whatever the right phrase is for you. But that is actually going to get you to the better answer as well. And so you'll actually perform better by admitting you need a little time to think about it.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree with that. And there's nothing better than when you do follow up with someone. I did this once. Here's a tip. I didn't know. And I said, well, let me research it and I'll give you my thoughts by the end of the day. End of the day, I was able to look at the proposal that we were doing, kind of look at what the client was talking about. And I came back with notes, and the notes were then incorporated into it.
Wow.
So that's a moment of, but it's again, yeah, you don't have to know everything. And we can say, but I'm going to get you that by the end of the day, or I'll get that to you first thing tomorrow. And then you can sit in it and you can show your brilliance.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. I love that. Well, as we wrap up, I want to give you the chance to introduce Chad and talk about Chad.
Bless Chad. This was something that I kind of had to do. And I think all of us, if we've been in corporate America, and his name probably is not Chad, it might be even a her, might be a they, but I think it's just the name that gives the perfect connotation for what we're trying to say. Chad is somebody who did okay in school. Really his motivation wasn't maybe to do great service for clients. It was to make a lot of money, and he never, as he was growing up, he was never told to be the good girl and don't do that because you could get hurt. He was always told boys will be boys and and the world circles around you. And he, I think we're starting to see this now where he comes into the meeting, he's ill prepared, but he'll be the first to speak. He speaks loudly and he speaks with so much confidence that, even, if you're there and you're prepared and you're ready to present your ideas, but you're watching how the room is responding to him because he comes in with so much confidence, even though they know he's full of shit. So that was something that I always did for myself where I'm like, no, I am brilliant and I know what I'm talking about. I'm going to channel my Chad because imagine what can happen if you have the confidence of a Chad, but your brilliance and your competence, and what can happen. So I always say, and I love even now as I go to meetings and there's that one person that stands up and, oh yeah, we need to do this. This is what we need to do. And there's so much like confidence and hype and and people are like nodding their heads like, yeah, they're feeding off the energy and the confidence. And then you sit there and you're like, hey, Chad, that was awesome. What if we tried it this way? And you're still feeling off the confidence, but you bring in your, oh yeah, that's good. Because usually if you say that, you'll get it. Yeah, that's good. And he'll sit back. And then you get your chance to shine. So that's something that when I was really working on my imposter syndrome, especially when I was a marketing director in-house, I worked with some attorneys and that's one of the best things I ever did because they expect things a certain way. And it taught me how to come in with, okay, they're going to listen to me. I can't be like, hey guys, I thought about we could doing this, conversation. It has to be like, hey, what's going on? And then they respond to like energy and confidence. I'm not saying you have to come in and be like, yo, but a way that feels good to you, of where you can present your confidence and you can capture a room and then present your brilliant ideas. That. Chad helped me overcome imposter syndrome in the conference room situations.
I love it. Well, and you shared some of that in a meeting that we were in together, and it just so stuck with me because I think anytime someone can visualize something, it rings truer to them. So being the Chad just really stuck with me. So I wanted to make sure we got that in.
Being the Chad, he does this a lot, so you can see his watch, moves around, and so it clanks and stuff like that. And he always, crosses the legs weird and awkward, so you can see the shoes, and oh, those are brand shoes. Those aren't, Kohl's. Shout out to Kohl's. May they sponsor us someday. But yeah, like there's certain things that you watch where you realize. And that's the thing, is sometimes we're so put off by what others are doing around us or what others say to us that we sometimes don't pay attention to actually what's happening.
Yes.
Because you can look at that and be like, okay, Chad, I'm gonna feed off your energy and I'm gonna take over the meeting. Yeah. Thanks, buddy. Or that, we have those well-intentioned, meaning, great job. You work so hard. Hey, imagine what you can do. You did this in 16 hours. Imagine what you can do when you work 2 days at 16 hours. There's always something like the burden that you said. Yeah. well-meaning compliments that become this extra burden, and it's just everything is on your shoulders versus you working the way that feels good to you.
Yeah.
And yeah, as I always like to remind everybody, especially with imposter syndrome, people are well-intentioned. They don't mean to put these, stifling obstacles in your way. Because remember, there are no obstacles unless you or someone else puts them there.
Yes.
And that confidence doesn't equal competence. And sit with yourself. That's the thing. I mean, it sounds so weird to say, but to say what happened in year 3 of my business versus what year 1 was like. When year 3, I was like, something needs to change because I'm doing great work for people, but I'm not doing myself a service. Like I'm not doing myself proud.
Yeah.
How do I change this? And that's why I say you really got to sit with yourself, give yourself a Post-it on the mirror every morning that hypes you up. That's like, hey, yesterday you did this, or hey, don't forget you overcame this, or you did this and you did this, just to remind you of how far you've come and that you still have so much to do.
Yeah. Yes, I love that. Well, and it all ties into what you talked about in the beginning, and you've helped me figure out what makes you the mermaid and helps you sparkle and helps you shine, because that's the thing that's actually going to stand out and really take you through all of this, is remembering what makes you special and leaning into that and being proud of that. So thank you so much for all your time today and sharing both your story, but also your advice and all the great tips that you shared. And we'll make sure to include all your contact information and way people can connect with you when we post this episode live. So thank you so much for coming and sharing all your stories.
Oh, thank you so much, Karen, for inviting me. This was so much fun.
Thank you so much for listening to the Shine at Work podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. Leaving a review takes just a few minutes and truly helps other people find the podcast. If you want to learn more about how I work with people to help transform their careers and shine brightly in their lives, let's connect. I work with amazing humans one-on-one to help them make a career change, go for that promotion, set career goals, and build a plan for success for a new job. I also lead group programs for new managers that are navigating this huge change in their careers and entrepreneurs who are building their teams for the first time. If any of that sounds like it could be helpful for you, you can email me directly at karen@karendweeks.com or message me through Instagram, LinkedIn, or my website. I just want to give a final shout out, as always, to Astronaut Go Home for our music and Novice Studios for making the podcast come to life. Until next time, remember that you can and deserve to shine at work.